Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 16th Democracy Talk. This is our first Democracy Talk of 2025. So, Happy New Year to everyone who's joining us on Zoom or on YouTube. And for our first Democracy Talk of the year, we're very happy to welcome Sonia Bussu of the University of Birmingham. She will be discussing the project Inspire, which uses co-designing for more inclusive and embedded participation. I won't go into much more detail because I'm sure that she will shortly. And before anything else, I'll hand it over to Sonia. Welcome, Sonia. Thanks for joining us.
Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me and my colleagues here today. So I'm Sonia Bussu, I'm Associate Professor in Public Policy at the University of Birmingham. I am co-coordinating this project Inspire with Brigitte Geisel from Goethe University, who is also here today. I don't know if you're sharing the slides.
I'll share them now.
Yeah, that's great. So if you can move to, uh, the first slide actually also has the name of a few of the partners that are here today with me, and I thank them for that. So Petra Guasti from Charles University in Prague, and Olivier Chobon from the Platonic Foundation based in Barcelona. And next slide. So Inspire is a project that includes 17 partners across Europe. Some of them are here with us today as I introduce them. The focus is really on how to strengthen democratic participation that is inclusive and impactful, and which is not based on one-off initiatives, but really embedded in the local policy environment and wider society. And our aim is to move away in a way from conceptualization of democracy as just institutional arrangements and rethink it also as everyday practice embedded in the local policy and societal context. So next slide. So the soul of Inspire, so to speak, is encapsulated by three key concepts that convey what we are trying to do to advance the field of democratic innovation. And by democratic innovations, we refer to those spaces and practices where citizens can participate directly in political decision making. So our premise is that democratic innovation designs very often decouple, separate the participation from the socio-economic context in which it happens. And Inspire instead takes a holistic approach that examines how participatory practices emerge, interact, and change in relation to a situated context. And we put a strong focus on socioeconomic factors that affect people's capabilities to participate, or what we call the political economy of participation. And we also argue that the predominant approach to designing democratic innovations across Europe, at least, has so far been very top-down, with a tendency to universalize modes of participation that tend to respond to the expectations and the resources of a narrow demographic, so white, educated, middle class, older. And instead, we embrace a co-creation approach to participatory spaces where not just the policy ideas, but the actual spaces in which participation happens are shaped with the participants. And in particular, we start from the perspectives of groups that are marginalized in political life and wider society. And we try to center their lived and living experiences to shape participatory spaces. And to do that, we use a range of methods, including arts-based and creative methods to strengthen inclusivity. And finally, we use assemblage as a theoretical and analytical lens to understand participation. And assemblage is a concept developed by Deleuze and Guattari in the 1980s, and it can offer a lens to help capture the interconnectedness, the dynamism of participatory processes and practices. So rather than as a full-fledged theory, we see it more as a perspective. So assemblage is a perspective that can complement all the critical theory that we use, such as intersectionality. And through an assemblage lens, reality is made of various components, human and non-human, including material resources, the actual physical space and technology. And these components interact and coalesce more or less stable configuration, which are called assemblages. And these assemblages are not static, they are dynamic, and they develop through the interplay of these diverse elements. And so the concept of assemblage helps us look at how different participatory spaces and the relationships that these spaces are imbued with coexist, interact, and change. So what are the implications for scholars and practitioners of democratic innovations? Because assemblage emphasizes connectivity and interactions, and also contingency and emergence. This orientation provides us with an opportunity to think of participation and democracy as really relational, focusing less on ever innovative designs and more on connections across multiple and overlapping publics, spaces, and practices. And so a participatory assemblage lens in a way warns us against blueprints and very neat sanitized design, we can say, because it places emphasis on context, and it really encourages to move from top-down designs and models to openness, to participation as an ecology embedded in the local political and social context. And so we move from democratic innovation as just institutional arrangements attached to political arenas, whether a particular public service or parliament or a government department, and instead really thinking about how we can deepen participatory democracy in everyday life as well. So next slide. We have 5 research work packages in this project, and we use a range of quantitative and qualitative methods and participatory methods to really examine democratic innovation through an intersectional lens. And work package 1 that Brigitte is here, and her team at Goethe University Frankfurt is leading on this work package. And they examine democratic innovations through an intersectional lens and construct the INSPIRE database of 30 cases to assess the conditions for intersectional inclusion. So this is a way of looking at current and past practice through an intersectional lens. Work package 2, which is led by Oliver Escobar and his team at the University of Edinburgh, assesses the interaction between socioeconomic structure, participatory processes, and governance systems. So it really is very much focused on the political economy of participation. Work package 3 is the work package that I lead on from Birmingham, but it also includes various other partners that are leading on different participatory processes. And here we plan a series of co-designed participatory processes with different groups, migrant women, people with disabilities, war refugees, diverse young people, homeless people, across 7 European countries. And we focus on different policy issues relevant to these groups. And what we want to do is reimagine with them what intersectional democratic spaces can look like. And one important part of this project is the Decidim platform. My colleague Olivier is here, and his team from Platonic is leading on work package 4. So what we're doing is really developing this civic tech participatory platform to support in an intersectional approach across all the participatory processes and the whole project. And we want to develop it and establish it as a usable, accessible, margin-responsive participatory platform. And then finally, work package 5, that is led by Petra, who is also here today from Charles University. It brings it all together. This work package brings it all together to understand public participation, public perceptions actually of barriers to intersectional equity, and assess legitimacy and feasibility of margin responsive designs for participatory processes. And we're going to do this through a series of co-production with different stakeholders, including policymakers, practitioners, and activists, to also reflect together on the learning from this co-design approach that we're going to take in work package 3 in particular. And then next slide. So the Inspire project really combines macro, meso, and micro level research with co-design and co-creation to try and develop more inclusive, resilient, and embedded participatory spaces. And the aim is really to foster social justice and more sustainable and embedded participation. And so to do this, one important output is going to be the development of the democratic capabilities framework that is going to happen primarily in work package 2, but also based on all the learning and the work in work package 3. And this takes inspiration from the capabilities approach developed by Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. And this is an approach to human development that offers an analytical counter-narrative to measures such as GDP or utilitarian indexes of satisfaction and preferences. And instead, the capabilities approach focuses on agency and empowerment, really paying attention to how social, economic, cultural, and political conditions interact in shaping what people can do and be, so their capabilities. And so this work really remains underdeveloped in participatory democracy. And so with Inspire, we'll take up the task of adapting the approach to create a democratic capabilities framework that can inform the study and practice of democratic innovations. And as part of co-design approach, we're going to experiment as well with a range of arts-based and creative methods to really bring fun and creativity into political participation. In recognizing that democracy is relational, as we were saying, and empathy and human connections are crucial to create and nurture spaces of dialogue and mutual trust. So we're going to use, in particular, I'm leading on also one of the participatory processes in the UK, where we're going to use legislative theatre, but this is just one of the practices we'll use. We'll also experiment with performance lectures in the Czech Republic, living labs in Bulgaria, play gamification in Poland, and other approaches. So the aim is really to further develop and strengthen these approaches through co-creation with participants. And I can tell you more about legislative theatre and other arts-based approaches later. So next slide. So this is my final slide about impact. Obviously, this project aims to bring conceptual impact, but also tangible policy impact. So we understand impact on 3 levels effectively: instrumental, so increasing the take-up of inclusive ways of co-creating participatory spaces from a range of different stakeholders, activists, practitioners, and policymakers, also at different tiers of government. But also working closely with community groups that we are going to engage with in this project, and ideally well beyond the end of the project. And we can perhaps discuss a bit more later this idea of how we can embed participation, so that it's not just the event, about the events we organized a part of this project, but some more long-term capacity building towards a more participatory culture. So we also aim to have conceptual impact because we want to mark a shift in the academic and policy discourse on democratic and public engagement. We want to encourage engagement with concepts of intersectionality and embeddedness of participation. And we obviously, as I mentioned, we're going to test assemblage as a theoretical lens and also an analytical tool. And most importantly, perhaps capacity building. So we see impact on capacity building of participants involved as co-designers and co-researchers. And so in terms of their well-being, agency, and democratic capabilities, but also on their communities and civil society. So as part of all these participatory processes, we are working closely with local community groups and institutions to really strengthen support for marginalized groups and awareness and support also existing community-led action that we can build on as part of this process. And the idea is that these groups will then take ownership and continue this work. At least this is our goal. And then obviously also capacity building on government and institution in terms of furthering a more inclusive participatory culture to policy making and strengthening commitment to policy change. So it's a very ambitious project. It brings together a lot of people that have been working in this space for a long time. We're on the 10th month of the project. So my colleagues that are here might also want to add a bit to what I've just said. And obviously I could only touch very briefly on what is a very nuanced project. But yeah, we're looking forward to your questions and thank you again for inviting us today.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen while I ask questions and invite everyone to ask questions. If someone would like to see any of the slides again, just let me know and I can reshare my screen. But yes, thank you so much. And I'm sure that everyone here will find the project quite useful. I see that we have a few people from our own Democrat project. So I just wanted to start off by asking a question myself before opening up the floor. So your project, and you mentioned this in the beginning with the three pillars, it critiques a predominantly top-down design of democratic innovation in Europe. So I wonder how you are navigating the tension between co-designing inclusive participatory spaces and the structural power imbalances that often, get into or permeate these processes when especially working with public officials or policymakers who might be resistant to more grassroots driven initiatives.
Yeah. I, I don't want to take all the space, so if Petra, Brigitte, and Olivier want to add to this, or otherwise I can share my initial response and then you can build on it, whatever you prefer.
Oh, whatever is easiest
Yeah.
for all of you. We'd love to hear from more people.
Yes, I mean it's a big question. It's an important question. I think there is also a lot of rhetoric about citizen participation, the importance of lived experience, and I agree that there are deep power imbalances and hierarchies that often we comfortably or uncomfortably gloss over, and definitely hierarchies of expertise also in democratic innovation spaces. So from our perspective, identifying allies and boundary spanners in policymakers, as well as in policymaking, as well as in civil society, is crucial to drive this more participatory culture. We see it as a process. So we don't think everything is going to change through the just with one project. We see it as a sort of way of building on what already exists and then support a sort of a move towards embeddedness in the long term. For instance, I've been using legislative theatre for a while now. Here, participants represent their own experiences of systemic oppression through a play, and then they co-develop policy solutions with an audience of community members, policymakers that act as spectators spect actors. So there is actually a deliberative process involving the wider community, the policymakers and the actors, but centering the perspective of the actors. So normally in democratic innovation, the academic discourse often frames the deliberation. And here we're taking a very different approach and I think the beauty of arts and theater is that an image, a line exchange between two characters in the play can really convey another's experience in a more visual and immediate way. And so these very human feelings of empathy then can become the shared space where very different people can start building a common language for change. And we recently carried out a scoping review as well on arts-based approaches for social change, and we found that play and games and arts-based and creative methods can really help disrupt and even out, although maybe temporarily unequal power dynamics. And play, joyful creative practice can really foster expression of ideas that might be difficult to articulate verbally. It's a process. It takes time. We also understand that without genuine socioeconomic equality in the wider world, there's always going to be hidden power dynamics in however beautifully facilitated deliberative space. So that's why for us it's important to also go beyond the sort of facilitated space and embed this practice in wider society. And I don't think this means choosing one model over the other, but really embracing more experimentation as part of our participatory ecology, rather than focusing on one or two models that we tend then to replicate everywhere. So really think about context, and there will be different power dynamics in different contexts, and working with civil society, perhaps to build on what emerges from the participatory spaces through campaigning and other bottom-up action. I hope I answered your question.
Maybe I just add a little bit. Thank you, Sonia, brilliantly as always. And what we do at this stage is that we have these pilots which we organize ourselves. I mean, the pilots with the kind of marginalized groups, and the pilots with the politicians. So at this stage in our project, we are not in this tension of the power between, what you wrote, the public officials and policymakers on the one hand and grassroots driven on the other, because we are the ones who organize these pilots. So it's kind of outside of this power structure because we organize them and we don't need the politicians to support us at this point. But as Sonia said, I mean, the hope is that it has some kind of effect on future developments. But so to clarify, it's at this point, we are not in this power tension.
That is true. But then, Brigitte, you're not on the ground.
Yeah, of course.
I can tell you that there are already power structures.
Yes.
We're navigating just in setting up the partnership and identify policy agendas.
And especially Petra, when she does what was explained in Work Package 5, when you organize, Petra, together with the politicians, these co-designed pilots, it will also be very interesting.
Yeah, and if I may add to it, so of course, I mean, I have been thinking quite a lot about what this power imbalance is. What does it consist of? What does it consist of? And what we have found in some elements of this we have tested. So this is not like a house. Inspire is not a house built in the sky. So we have not just built it out of dreams. We have built it on years and years of experience of the whole team, experience of what works and what doesn't, and what can work under certain circumstances. So we are not going to deliver the European Commission and to the European society any magical pill what will work. But I think that what we can do is to prepare a blueprint and build a scaffolding by empowering the actors, and especially in what we are going to do with the stakeholders. So what I find is that you really need an engaged stakeholder. So maybe it's not going to be the minister, maybe it's going to be a deputy minister, but by building relationships over time, and especially starting with finding language. So bringing civil society and ministerial officials together, that has worked for us. So we realized that actually one of their basic problems is that they don't understand each other's language. That the bureaucratic language and the language of activism are different, but that when they meet, and especially when like some art and games are applied and they have to fulfill tasks together and they are willing to dedicate the time to spend the morning together, of course, I mean, how can you scale this is another matter, but they will understand each other, and that is the first and a necessary step. So I think that if they will understand that they are human beings, that these are human beings they are dealing with, if they encounter them, and they will see that behind the policy there is a real person, and that intersection. So, for example, to make public officials who work with homeless people understand that they need to address intersectionality, because homeless women are facing different issues than homeless men, especially in terms of sexual violence, etc., and that can prevent them from actually approaching services that are not tailored to their needs. So I think this is something. So with kind of learning to understand each other, finding a common language, and that would allow them to develop empathy, which is, I think, the game changer for us.
Thank you all. I think that was very insightful. I think also integrating art and like these games and theater, it really provokes like human emotion to become more developed. And so, yeah, the empathy is a very big part of everything that you're doing with the project. Georgios, I see that you have a question. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Vanina. Thanks to Sonia and the team there. Um, Very interesting. And of course, the art, yes, it releases the emotional intelligence or something, another way to communicate. It's very important. But is it a bit late in a way? What's happening in Europe now? We see a lot of people turning away from democracy for various reasons, right? Is this strong enough to really bring back or make people feel that they own the project of European states, or they are further away from it, and this is part of the liberal agenda that won't, I mean, you need to shake them a bit more to bring back the democracy project. This is a concern. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure you're aware of it. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.
Yeah, I think Petra will have a lot to say to that, because she works really on authoritarian regimes as well. But from my perspective, I would say one of the issues is the technocratic approach of liberal democracies that has also fed into the way we understand democratic innovations. If you think about how a mini public is developed, has got a very technocratic approach to policymaking, and I think technocracy has contributed to ushering in populistic reactions, right, in the context in which big socioeconomic divides were not addressed, right, and as translated into more and more distrust toward democratic institutions, because they are seen just as institutional arrangements. And that's why, in a way, I don't know if you're familiar with John Dewey's work on creative democracy and understanding democracy as everyday practice. And I think what is missing in our societies that are extremely polarized is any understanding of what democratic skills entails. right? And that's why we're trying to really challenge the idea of democratic institutions and participatory institutions, as well as just institutional arrangement, and build democratic capacity within the community. And of course, this is a long-term process, but if you ask me, deliberative pedagogy in schools, I think could have much broader, deeper impact than electoral reforms or a new social democratic party in power. So I think it's that's what we're trying to do, and so making democracy fun and playful while addressing serious issues that people have strong stake in, it's important, but also bringing in different groups together in spaces where they can have a dialogue in safe ways, in safe spaces. And so that's why what we're trying to do. And I think arts are and creative methods can be a good medium because they allow to in a way to move away from just rationalistic exchanges of arguments that might alienate some groups, and instead so create a space where to create a shared language effectively, which we no longer have. So that's what we're trying to do. So we don't expect to turn the authoritarian way with one, the turn with one project, but we're sort of trying to build capacity building, to do capacity building within the community itself to make it resilient and resistant, right? Rather than focusing just on political arenas. I don't know if you disagree with me.
Yeah, if I can add, as Sonia has said, this is something I spent most of my waking hours thinking about, and so I just want to make two small points. One is that I think no soup is so hot as it's eaten. It's a metaphor. So what I think is that this we have to disentangle, and Brigitte has been doing that in her work, the critical citizens. So not everybody who is not satisfied with how democracy works now is actually looking for authoritarian alternatives. Some are, but not everybody. So we are actually, so there is not a binary democracy as it is, the status quo versus autocracy, as it has been happening in Hungary, closing of spaces, etc., for participation. But what we are looking at is democratizing democracy. And it starts with recognizing that democracy as we know it now has not been working for everybody. And the people we are looking at this project are actually those for whom democracy as it is, its current institutions, has not delivered in every possible sense of it, not just economically, but also in their inclusion. And the second point is that when you look at authoritarianism, how it works, what it seeks is apathy, and how it works, how it gets this apathy, is through fear. And what we are about in Inspire is about agency, as Sonia has said, about capabilities, about giving people, enabling people, the weakest ones, to recognize that they have power. And that as a check really resonates with me, because I want to just recall, and maybe some of our viewers want to look at it. There is a very important essay that was very important to me that's called The Power of Powerless. And it's by Václav Havel, a Czech writer, then a political prisoner, turned a president. But he was a theater play writer. And this is about how authoritarianism works, how it eats your soul, and how you need, how the powerless have the power of recognizing that those in power are illegitimate. And so I think that this is something where we try to counter apathy and fear with agency and hope.
Thanks. just to add on this briefly, I think the theoretical or normative premise of the whole project is that democracy should be understood as self-governing, that citizens themselves decide how they are governed. This is why the co-production of our participatory formats is so important. Together with those who participate, we decide how they participate, how the format, how the participatory innovation looks like. And I think this is like the baseline of the whole project. And that democracy is a self-governing endeavor. Unfortunately, we have forgotten about it and think democracy is a set of institutions, it's elections, but no, it's not. So to go back and say, what would happen if we would really co-produce democracy, if we would co-produce the institutions, the practices with those who are affected. So this is like the normative background, and this is how we try to, live it, work with it in our project.
Yeah, that's true. And I just want to say that as part of these pilots we're organizing, we're embedding a participatory evaluation of these processes. So we're going to evaluate these processes from the perspective of the participants, co-designers. And so I think that's going to help us understand better what works for whom, when, and what we need to rethink together to ensure that participation is genuinely inclusive and sustainable.
Thank you. And thank you for that from all of you, all of your contributions again. I think we have just a bit of time left. So Karsten, I see that you have a question. You can go ahead.
Yeah, I only want to make two comments. One is that the basic of your project seems very similar to our project. We have only another understanding of democracy as we have defined it as a participation in collective decision making at every stage, and not only on the institutional or political stage as we defined it. The second comment is that the arts approach, the artistic approach, seems closer to the two other sister projects of us, which are focusing on body art, and the others really on art. And the third comment or question is that I'm more interested now in what Birgit has said about this participatory approach. This is also very linked to our project, but from my perspective, it would also be interesting to know how you are doing it. Really in practice, what you mentioned, these pilot projects, what means for you pilot projects, how you are doing. We are in our projects, we are doing now concrete interventions in schools, oriented to different kinds of democratic experiences. But it's for me not so clear what you are doing in these pilot projects.
Yeah. Well, I can that. So we have 7 different processes. Each process engages with groups that are considered marginalized, but we take an intersectional lens to this marginalization. So, for instance, in the pilot I'm organizing in the West Midlands here in the UK, we are recruiting 15 young people, diverse background, but we are working with the Young Combined Authority, which is a softly institutionalized body here that has a direct link to the local government in the West Midlands. And with the Young Combined Authority, we have identified a policy issue that through various workshops that they organize involving different youth groups in the regions, they want to focus on, which is inclusive work opportunities for youth employment that where there is a lot of discrimination across, along gender, race, and then we're going to use legislative theatre for these young people that are going to be paid as co-researchers and co-producer to develop a play representing their experience of looking for work. They're young people between 14 and 18. And then we're going to invite a team of policymakers and the wider community to respond to this play and co-develop policy proposals that are going to feed into the existing youth employment the plan that is going to be shaped up over the next year in the region. And each process has identified live policy agendas that speak to the groups that we want to include. So in Hungary, they're engaging on social housing, with people living in social housing or experiencing homelessness, and they're going to use photo voice and other creative methods to really reflect on their experience and how we can co-produce policies that respond to their needs with policymakers. In Lisbon, they're using legislative theatre and dance with people with physical disabilities and both activists and lay citizens. So there's a range of different processes, but each process is being co-designed with the participants that are in most cases paid as a member of the team. But the idea is also to open through these co-created spaces from the perspectives of the we want to involve, to open up to the wider community. And so rethink participatory spaces from those perspectives that are normally silenced or left out, and then invite the community and the makers to these spaces. And yeah, we'll let you know in a couple of years how that works. But yes, it's a challenge, but I think it's important to really rethink participatory democracy away from just something that is designed by academics and policymakers that don't have an understanding of what it takes to participate if you come from a very different backgrounds. And so we don't want to just co-design the policy ideas, but the space where these ideas are co-created. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I guess it's difficult to summarize.
I'm interested because you do similar things, as you said.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we should perhaps organize some exchanges and learning. Yeah.
So how do you approach it? How do you do it in your project?
They're working with school, right? You said.
You're working with schools, if I understood right.
Yeah, to say it, but all partners are working with schools, and some are working with other universities on teachers' education.
Yeah.
The problem which we faced at the beginning here in Spain was, the schools are not partners of the project, we must engage them and give them some space to develop their projects. So we engage with projects which are running still in the schools.
Yeah.
They are very different ones, and some ones produce in new spaces. For example, to create in a small village a youth council related with promoted by the school. Another one is on reading rights readings, and so on. And there's one which are now in Madrid, which is doing something about the urban space in turn of the around the surrounding of the schools, working with residents of older people to see how was the history of the surroundings, and so to give the voice to the children and the youth together with the teachers. Our primary target group in the project, as it was developed now, are the teachers, because we consider that the teachers are the persons who has experience in the learning process. And the second target group in the later stage probably will be the students and themselves, how they experience these interventions. And so this is I believe in the other countries is similar. They have other themes on which they are working. There could be smaller projects, longer projects, but we are still in the beginning of these interventions.
That sounds really, really interesting. Olivier is here. He hasn't said anything, but he is also based in Spain, and we have this participatory platform that we hope can become also a sort of hub of sharing learning. And I wonder if that could be also a space where we can bring together findings and learning from different projects. But we should definitely keep this conversation going.
For sure. And Carsten, we're about to launch a school for creativity and democracy for young trainers of so I think this could be something we could do together, and we're in need of organizations or projects like yours giving, also like donating some kind of a experience, so we could also activate the first cohort of young trainees on deliberative democracy and creativity and art-based methods. So it's pretty experimental, but I think it will be running next year for the first iteration. So I'm happy to work and see if we can combine our strategies there.
You are here in Spain?
Yes, based in Barcelona.
Oh yeah, then we can meet.
Yeah, so we exactly, yeah, and I can also
Excellent.
Yeah,
We-
no.
A new project is born.
No, but I guess it's a lot to do. We have a couple of pilots from Inspire who are tackling minors. Actually, Sonia's is leading one of them. So it's also a very interesting issue. It's because we'll be training, people from above 18 years old, and they will be in charge of facilitating processes and mostly deliberative or simulation of citizen assemblies in schools with the youngsters. So our idea is just to jump over sometimes the teacher. But we also had projects which would consider training the teacher first, but that also works, especially on disinformation programs for the youth. So I'm happy to be on the Inspire or seeing if we can see more connections with Inspire's projects or pilots that are tackling the youth.
Yeah. And regard the platform, the digital platform, judges must have a voice there, as we have also the digital platform to interchange experience.
Oh, fantastic.
And Vanina too is together there, and yes. We have the Agora and Manan, who is behind the Project Democrat sign. We can also connect and offer a platform, electronic platform to meet and bring people over and discuss.
That's great. Yeah, just to let you know, if you're based in Spain, you may know Decidim is one of the most clever deliberative product, and it's open source, run by the City Council of Barcelona, and it's actually the platform we're using as part of the Inspire, let's say, cosmology on. So I think that's something to say.
We're open source also.
Okay, that's good. So I'm glad to connect on beyond narratives and strategies. We could also talk data exchange. So let's keep the conversation.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for reaching out to us. That's definitely a lot of synergies.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone for joining today. I'm glad this was quite fruitful for both of us, both of the projects. And just to close out, we have our next talk on the 29th, which will be with a representative from Utrecht, who will also speak on education in democracy, democratic education. So if you want to join into the next talk, I'll send over the link, and I'll also share our Agora, which has the calendar of the next democracy talks that we'll have.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Vanina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good
Bye.
luck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.